it's a fairly grey and dreary morning up here at Ashley Lane, Bradford-on-Avon. We've got the under-16s in the background having a cup match, and sadly it's a fairly grey day for English rugby, isn't it? Because there was such a great plan put in place by Stuart Lancaster 4 years ago, bringing in new players, building those players over the course of 4 years in preparation for this tournament, this 2015 Rugby World Cup. And sadly, it wasn't the Australia game that cost us, it was the Welsh game, and the decisions that happened 20 minutes from the end in that stopped us progressing through this World Cup. Such a disappointment, such a shame, because the lads have worked so hard. I know as a player, having been out there, how despondent they'll be this morning. It'll just be an awful morning for them.
Well, what do you think? I mean, it seems harsh to ask it, but this is sport and it's a harsh world, as you well know. Should the coach stay on? Should Stuart Lancaster stay? Should the captain remain?
Well, I absolutely believe that Stuart Lancaster should stay. If you look back historically at teams that have done well in World Cups, Clive Woodward, obviously, in 2003. Back in 99, he had the disappointment of losing to South Africa in the quarter-final, a home World Cup for us then as well. Graham Henry, 2007, New Zealand, unthinkably losing to France in that quarter-final, then going on and winning in 2011. So for me, maybe the mistake that was made, that Martin Johnson was let to disappear from the English game. If he'd retained his position after 2011, Stuart Lancaster probably would be in that setup still with him, building what he's built culturally and heritagely behind the scenes with England at the moment. And I feel we'd be in a stronger position had they done so. So now I feel the RFU have evolved as a setup since then. 4 years they're pulling together, they understand, they've really evolved as an entity, and I believe they'll keep Stuart Lancaster for the next 4 years. But they'll, without doubt, there'll be a big and a strong review over what's happened and why it happened and who's to blame. And without the finger pointing, here and now, there has to be some changes made.
And Lewis, one of those key issues about decisions taken, and I'm not talking about they're going to be analysed forevermore, I think decisions taken on the pitch, particularly in the Welsh game, but this decision taken long before the World Cup took place, and it shows the difference, I suppose, between the Australian and the English approach. And I'm talking about players playing overseas. England, Stuart Lancaster was resolute. Those brilliant players, English players playing in France, you would not be eligible. The Australians changed the rules pretty late, and look at the benefits they got.
Yeah, do you know what? It was ridiculous for me that Matt Giteau has been away from the Australian game for 4 years anyway. When you see what a talent he is, when he played in the World Cup yesterday, the game that he played, not only that, you have Mitchell coming back in, just some class performers in Pocock and Hooper around the breakdown that stifled our game, to be quite honest. England played some good rugby. They got into Australia's 22, but were constantly stifled by those two out-and-out sevens. And you talk about overseas players, the one in particular that people are talking about this morning is Stephen Armitage. Now, he is an out-and-out seven, something that England haven't naturally produced over the years. An out-and-out seven that goes and gets the ball. The last and probably the first we ever had was Neil Back. You go back to Winterbottom, Gary Rees, they weren't really out-and-outs. Richard Hill wasn't. So we need to invest, if we want out-and-out sevens in this game, we need to invest more time into producing them, because the way that the breakdown, the refereeing is done over here doesn't really allow for it. Do I think that Stuart Lancaster and England going forward should be allowed to pick overseas players? Very much so. I believe that you can't have a European Player of the Year twice not included in your international setup. But having said that, if Stuart Lancaster makes a decision that he's not going to pick them, and we're not going to pick overseas players, he's not then going to go back on it just for one individual. Okay. But it is a shame, I think, that we didn't see Stephen, whether he would have made the starting lineup or not, involved in that squad.